Yeah. Hey everyone. So we'll be talking about how you scrape internet or like textual data on the internet as part of this workshop. Here's the rough outline for what we have in plan. We'll do some housekeeping. There are certain tools we'll be using through this workshop, which I believe are already pinned on the chat room. But I think we'll have you onboarded on the platforms so that you can follow along in the workshop with us. We're going to talk to you about certain cool projects that I think exist around the world where scraping was a core component of those projects. In order to understand scraping better, we will take a detour into understanding web programming in general, like how websites are made and what are the different components that go into building web pages. Uh, we'll work on a dummy website. We'll have you all collaborate on it and design like a event page for today's event. And then we'll show how somebody would scrape that event page to get a list of participants or to get data from that web page. We'll take a 5-minute break, after which we'll get into scraping Rekta, which if you don't know is a repository of Hindi, Urdu Hindi and Urdu poetry. And so we'll try to show you how you would go about scraping poetry from those web pages. And we have a few more other poetry websites. If we have the time to get to them, we'll do that in the remaining time. And then after this, there's a 1-hour optional workshop for people who want to stay back. And I think the goal is that we'll describe certain problem statements, and you guys can pair up or individually try to solve them, and the instructors will be around for any kind of debugging and problem solving. So as part of housekeeping, you guys should see 2 links on top of your chat window here. This is a link to a platform called Replit, which is basically like a collaborative space to write code. So think of it as like Google Docs, but for coding. And so, the idea is that all of us can together write certain code and make things happen. So if you can access it, please try to click on the link and sign in. You should be able to use your Gmail or GitHub's or I think even Facebook account. So I'm just going to wait like for 2-3 minutes to see like if you guys can sign into these platforms. I see that some people have begun signing in, so I think it's working. If anybody has any doubts, just let me know. I've also attached a link to the website that we are going to be building as part of this workshop, and we'll also be using this workshop as a website that will scrape. So just have the link handy so that you know what is the data we're working. How many attendees are in the workshop right now?
20 right now, including.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think it looks like we have 11 people joined in so far.
Let us know if anyone's having issues with logging in. Also, could one of the admins please pin the URL that Denny just shared on the chat to the announcement?
Should we begin editing the Replit document with our username and location?
Not yet, but you can, if you're gonna jump one step ahead, maybe. But let's wait for like the first half of the workshop.
You are welcome to, create your own Replit and start editing and seeing it change. But since this is common to all the people, we should just wait for everyone to come together.
I think we can. Oh wait, no, I do see that
so.
It's capped at 11. No? I guess some people are having problems. We'll proceed if you don't need any help debugging. I think we should just proceed.
Right. So also in the meantime, as Denny's presenting, if anyone's having issues, feel free to ping me one-on-one, and I can help you guys on board.
Okay. So if you look at my screen now, this is the webpage we are kind of working with. It's like a dummy website for this event that we're having. And it's a pretty standard vanilla website, right? So you have certain headings, you have some images, you have text, you have different sections for the instructors and the participants, and there's a like button for, if you like the event, and anytime you click on the like button, it increments the counter, right? So let's take a step back on how do we reach to this web page, right? To reach a web page, you open a browser, you enter the URL, you hit enter, and all this, you see all this on your
Denny, yeah? Can I quickly jump on what scraping has achieved? Can I do my slide?
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I missed this slide. Okay, actually, before we jump into scraping, I'll have to explain what scraping is and what it's done.
Yeah. So before Denny jumps into all the HTML and you're like, oh, what is happening here? We should just build out some motivation for why we get into scraping. One of the things with scraping is that it's extremely ubiquitous, and surprisingly, a lot of projects, it's so ubiquitous that if you just search for scraping, you wouldn't find any like one thing. You'd find like a generic list of ideas of what you can do with scraping. So I'm just sharing, like, we've tried to show some examples that are representative of different domains. So Flight Stats, for example, is a business site where it's scraping information from a lot of different flight aggregators or airlines and putting it together so you can track a flight. This Wired article on top, which is from 2014, was a person who basically scraped all their OkCupid profiles, and then did a lot of A/B testing to figure out. He saw all the questions that OkCupid asks and the way that people answer it, and then like sort of distributed it into buckets, and then eventually figured out how to like whom the sort of personality he wanted to portray on OkCupid, and that's how he found his match. But also that scraping is a tool and it gets used in all sorts of ways. And so Clearview AI, this is fairly recent, this is from last year. It scraped people's Facebook profiles, Twitter profiles, saw their faces, and then built a facial recognition tool out of that. And this was fairly violative because people don't share their Facebook profiles with this goal or with this expectation that someone's going to scrape them and they are going to be recognizable anywhere in the world where this this tool Clearview AI is being used. And so Clearview AI is currently being sued. Some other projects, then if you could go on slide 6. Yeah. So the Wayback Machine is might be something that many of you have used, but it's like the default archive of the internet now. And they've been basically crawling web pages since 1996 and have been saving them. So you can see the history of certain web pages. And it's always very interesting to see what Facebook.com looked like in 2007 as opposed to what it looks like in 2015 as opposed to what it looks like now. And the last one is Sephora. And this was just a creative project where someone scraped all the reviews for Sephora, which is a makeup brand. And then they basically scraped and showed all the reviews where people have expressed that they were crying for somehow in their reviews, and it's interesting because it's like, why are you crying when you're writing reviews about Sephora? Anyway, so that is that's another creative project, but there's so many. So with that, I would just pause and say that scraping is used in a lot of places, but before you jump into scraping, it's helpful to understand what's happening under the hood, which is where Denny is going to get into his web programming.
Yeah.
So Denny, on to you.
Yeah. So, all right. So, resuming from where I was, right? So, when you actually, how do you get to a web page? You open a browser, you enter the URL, and when you hit enter, you see the web pages. But what's happening behind the scenes is that when you enter a URL, your browser receives certain files, and those files have instructions or content in it that kind of tells the browser how to present this information in front of the user. So now let's look at this Replit that I've created for this website. Just to give you a brief overview, Replit is like a coding environment where we can edit certain things collaboratively and see what it looks like on the right side. So on the right side, you see a preview of the web page that we are working on. On the left side, you see all the files that are that make this web page, and in the center, you see the content of some of these files. So a web page is made of a few files. One of them is the HTML file, which is what is open in front of you. HTML broadly defines the structure and the content of a web page, right? So by structure, I mean like what is the hierarchy, where is the heading, where is the paragraph, what paragraph is under which heading, like that kind of structural information, and the content, which basically means the text itself. So if you are kind of paying observation, keeping a close watch, you'll notice that you'll see some of the content that's on the web page in the code base, right? So for example, crawling the web for poetry is something you see in the code here, and you also see on the web page itself. If you let's say randomly scroll down further, you'll see my name on the website, and you'll also see it somewhere in the code here. If you are looking closely, you'll find that it's there as well, right? So HTML is basically the structure and the content of the web page. Similarly, there's a CSS file, which is where you define how to style the web page. So for example, whether you want the heading to be like what's the font size you want the heading to be, right? What is the color that should be there? How much spacing should be there between each text? That's the kind of information you would define in the CSS file. And if you just look around here, and if you're feeling actually creative, try playing around with some of these values, right? So like, for example, here you see something that mentions, even if you don't understand the language, right? You see that something here says font size 80, and if I just randomly tweaked it to be 120 and I hit run, you will notice, oh, I guess with so many people on the web, it's kind of slowing down. Anyways, you notice, the fonts change just drastically, right? So CSS is where you define the font. The other, the last important component of a web page is something called JavaScript, which is you see that here in the script.js file. JavaScript is how you define certain dynamic behaviors on the web page. So, for example, so if you come to the very bottom of the web page, right, you see this like section, and if you click on the like button, you see that the number is incrementing, right? So this content wasn't there when we loaded the web page, but once the website is loaded, and if you want to change certain content in the web page, you would do something, and that's what I mean by the dynamic content aspect of it. And all those behavior are described in the JavaScript file. So now let's look at the HTML file. From the point of view of scraping, HTML is the one that's the most important for us, because like I said, that's where the most of the content of the web page is, right? So I want even without understanding anything about HTML, you might, if you just look at it, right, there is something, there's like something like a structure inherent to an HTML file, which kind of reminds me of these dolls. I think they're called Russian dolls. Let me just pull up the picture, right? So the idea is that you have one doll within which there's a smaller doll, within which there's another doll, within which there's another doll. And this nesting structure is a recurring theme in an HTML document, right? So you'll see this often where you have something like whatever, like, let's not get into what this is, right? But there is something which is inside something else, which is inside something else, so as you're like parsing and trying to make sense of HTML, you have to keep looking out for these structures, because this will kind of help you find content that you're interested in. And like when you write scrapers, this level of like trying to find what is inside with what, and how, what's inside that and what's inside that, those kind of answers will be helpful in scraping. So now that you've seen what the web page looks like and what the code for it looks like, I'm going to dive into individual lines of an HTML page. But to not overwhelm you, I'm going to remove all the code that is not really helpful, or like it's a bunch of noise. So let's try to write the most basic website possible. I see some people are trying to edit.
Hi guys, did we lose Denny, or is it just my internet that's slow? Denny, we lost you at, well, I don't know if he's here or not. Okay, maybe I could guide, I could share my screen and see how it goes, except that I'm not a pro at that programming at all. Okay, so you all should be able to, again, see yourselves. Okay, can everyone see the screen share? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the first thing that Denny is doing here is that he's been saying that, he's gotten rid of everything in the header section. And he's basically just written one line of like something that's called a heading, right? So this is a head 1, H1. And so let's just run it and see what happens. So you see the first thing which says crawl the web for poetry. Well, you could add other things here and say, so for folks who are typing, this is a Google Doc. As you type, yeah, it changes the web page. But anyway, actually, maybe one of you should do it. Does anyone want to add the date there? Just someone who is being enthusiastic. You want to add the date? Great, excellent. Okay, and let's close that with, let's close this element, and I'll explain an element by saying using the same format as the top. So do basically this, right? Oh, great, someone did it. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, and so when you do this, you have you basically have something called, well, no, do not change that again. There we go. Let's pause on editing this document for now. Okay, so we should be able to see the heading and the date. This shouldn't take as long to run, but either I have bad internet or we're just too many people on this doc. There we go. So now we have crawling the web for poetry, and we have the date. Okay, so now we can do, so just to give a broad sense, in an HTML page, every HTML page has to have something called a header. You can, for the most part, when you're looking at scraping, ignore the header. And in a header, you define something called, a title, which is, so you see how, like, on my tabs, you see something called scraping workshop here. You see scraping text for the Google slides. So that's what this title refers to, is what shows up in the tab. Then you have something called the body, and that's what we're really concerned about. Danny, do you want to take on now?
Yeah. I'm just checking. You guys can hear me, right?
I think you might want to turn off your video. That might make it better.
Oh, I see. Hey, can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah. So I was sharing.
Yeah.
And maybe you can just keep typing and it'll show up on my screen, right?
Yeah. Oh, wait. So I also started scaling. So maybe you can stop now at this point, right? Sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think there's a lag when I type on your screen.
Got it. Okay. So Danny, I was just at the point where I was explaining what a body is, and maybe if you want to quickly explain what elements are, and
So every item in an HTML document is defined by an HTML element, right? So HTML elements kind of serve a purpose of telling the browser and also the humans what exactly is this element's role in the document, right? So for example, the text you see here, crawling the web for poetry, you notice that it's wrapped around with something called H1, right? And H1, the H stands for heading and 1 stands for the level of the heading. So it's a heading number 1, heading number 2, things like that. Similarly, we have for another text element that we have is something called P, which stands for paragraph. So if you have a lot of textual data, you would wrap that in a P element, right? So
okay. So the instead of ASDF, the bit, Danny, actually you should speak.
No, I just copy pasted the entire code. Now I think you can start explaining the different elements, right?
Yeah. Okay. So then the other element that Danny was talking about was something called a paragraph, right? So that is, instead of ASDF, what Danny's written now is basically, like, okay, let's just get rid of all of this for now. Is now. Okay, so I'm also going to get rid of what Danny called noise, so we can go back to the bare bones structure we started with. So now you basically see that we have something called, we have the headings that we'd created. We have the text paragraphs, right? The other additional thing that Danny's done is he's added like an image. And the way you add an image, which is also an element in an HTML file, is by saying source is equal to photo.jpg, right? The other things that we can add now is we can add the instructor names and the participant names, right? So let's just add the instructors as, so we'll add that as another heading, which is there's a heading called instructors. And then we, since we're adding text here, we'll put mine and Denny's names in the element type called paragraph. If anyone has any doubts at this point, just please pause, stop us, and we can answer it, right? And similarly, we will add, just copy pasting this, and I will add my name here, right? So now we have a web page which is,
Yeah, I think for the participant section, I think we'll just have them write it, right? So we don't have to do that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I was. Do you want to do div right now, or do you want to?
Yeah. So if you notice here, if I look at the code right now, there's a lot of H1s and paragraphs, and there is no structural hierarchy in the sense that uh, everything in the top part of this document right now, where it says crawling the web for poetry and all the headings, that is kind of at the same level at the instructors. So the elements that we have considered so far are like basic HTML elements that let you define what is the structure of the document and what is the element's purpose. Like for example, heading is a heading in paragraph, P is a paragraph, and ing is an image, right? There are certain types of HTML elements whose whole purpose is to just organize content in a way where it gives the document a structure and a hierarchy. So one of the elements that's used for this purpose is called the div element. So going back to the Russian doll model, right? So you basically uh, take div elements and wrap them around everything that's inside, that you want inside, that you want to be inside that div. And the idea is that now, like the section you see at the top here is, well, we haven't named the div yet anything. We just know that for whatever reason, this section at the top with the crawling and the heading and the paragraph is somehow distinct from this section here, right? So that's the purpose.
Which is the instructor section.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of div serve, is to just give give us logical, basically to group logical units of a document together. So let me just now.
Yeah, Danny, I'll copy that.
Yeah. I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So now, so far what we've done now is that we know that now there's like two sections in the document. One is the whatever the top section is, and whatever this bottom section is, right? Now what we can do is we can actually identify these divs with a name, so that we can actually talk about them in a sensible manner. Like we can, instead of saying the top section, top div and the bottom div, we can actually give them a name. And how you do that is by using this attribute called class. And so let's say we call this section cover, because it's the cover image of the web page. And then let's call this section instructors, right?
So Danny, there's a little bit of lag, right? Since I'm sharing my screen, I don't think people can see this right now.
Okay, so should I? Okay,
yeah.
I'll be slow. Just let me know if I'm overshoot.
Yeah. So you have div class is equal to cover, and then you have a div class is equal to yeah. Great. Okay.
Yeah. So now we can talk about this document in a much more intelligible manner, where we can say, hey, I can tell to a colleague that look at the text inside the cover div and give me that text, or I can tell somebody that look at the text that's inside the instructors div and give me that, or give me all that content. So now let's look at how. So other than just being able to communicate about the HTML document, you can also use this to use this in the CSS files to kind of affect the behavior of certain things a little bit. So for example, if you notice, we had defined the section called instructors, right? So let's run the code right now, and you'll see that. Oh wait, what was the class name? Oh, it's instructors, right? Okay, so let's see. We have a div called instructors, right? So let's see if we can style just this section differently. So how you would do that is you would come to the CSS file and you would refer to that section by using you would refer to that section to that div by its name, and you would prefix a dot before it. And now if you write anything inside this code, inside this block, that would affect just that div. So for example, if I were to just change the background of that, if I were to specify that the background of that div should be red, and if I run the command, you will see that, just that section. Oh, sorry, my bad.
So again, Danny, we're not at your point.
Wait, are you? Do you have the CSS file open on your side?
Sure. I can open it from the style.css.
Yeah, and go to the very bottom.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah. So this is where you're defining, right? This is where you were defining? Do you want me to copy this? Yeah, okay. So
hold on. Okay. Don't copy it. Just I'm noticing that it's not affecting the divs on this. Can you debug that?
Then it's not because I removed the lines from the header.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I can add them back.
Yeah. Can you please?
Yeah. Okay. So right. So basically, Denny had mentioned this at the beginning, where he said that there's something called the style sheet, right? Now you want this HTML to know that it should look for information in the style sheet, which is why you have to sort of add this at the top. But yeah, you basically go to style.css, and here this is where Denny was writing the background color to be red, right?
Yeah.
So now if we go here and run this, we see that only the header section is red, but if you scroll down, the rest of this is, this instructors, the background of instructors is red, right?
So I think it was just to give you an idea of how you can use the names of the div to individually address certain sections of the web page. And this is going to be quite useful because no matter what website you see anywhere on the internet, you would find they use these same elements like headings and paragraph for the textual data, but they also use divs to group certain related things together, and those divs have name. So knowing that you can address divs by name and extract data out of them is useful. So as part of this last part of this workshop, I'm just gonna copy paste the.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to copy paste the participant section into the code again. And may I please request all the participants who are here to kind of try to make sense of the participant section and add their names. Just copy paste the code and reuse some of the parts and just add your names into the participant section. So you should see a participant section in the code now. Garima, you see it, right, in the index.html?
Yeah. So I think, Sean, you had asked if this is where you enter. Yes, this is where this is a good time to enter your location.
Yeah. I see 3 names so far, right? 2 names.
Are we creating different divs for each participant?
We are, yeah.
Yes.
There's 11 of you here. Can we have more of you write your names? I think the more people who write their names in the divs, it would be interesting to scrape it later on. So I think it would be nice to have more data.
I think we should take 2 more minutes and then move on. Yeah.
Oh, and you can totally put anonymous names. If that wasn't clear.
Quite insane. So many people working on it.
I think we have enough to start working on it.
Yes. Denny, could you just do a quick run through to make sure that there aren't any extra divs?
I'll
extra closing
I'll
brackets?
sanitize it and then I'll I'll open the website and we'll inspect.
Right. Okay, so while you're sanitizing it, I will move on.
Yeah.
Okay. And let's go to this website that Denny has shared on the top, right? So this is, sorry, wait. Right, so if everyone can see, this is the website as it's supposed to look, and Denny will make it look like that in just a bit, right? And so we have all the heading, some description. We have these instructors. As you can see, the div creates these boxes, right? So every div is like a separate functional unit, in a way. And so now this is typically how you would see something on the internet. Also, if everything around the HTML bit was overwhelming, know that it's not going to bear in some ways. Like it might help you understand this better, but if that was overwhelming, it'll settle and it's fine. You should be able to make sense of this website and the scraping section regardless. Okay, so if I want to now, I see something as sort of clean as this, but we just worked with a lot of clunky code, right? And so how do I look at this and realize what is that clunky code in the background? Because that's what I need to scrape something. And to do that, what really comes in handy is something called this inspect tool. Now, depending on the browser you are on, if you are on, I use something called Brave. So this is what the inspect tool looks like on my interface. But if you use Chrome, there should be something that's similarly called inspect tool. And if you use Firefox, there should be something called inspect element, right? So I am going to basically do inspect. And the way you click on inspect is you can click anywhere on the web page and it will give you this option called inspect, right? You can click on a word on the web page and it'll show you this element, this tool called inspect. Okay. Now when you see this inspect tool, and again, like the interface can look different for different people, right? Like it can be at the bottom of your screen, it can be on the side of the screen, but functionally what you see inside it should be the same. Okay. And now you will see everything that we just created. So yeah.
Can you just increase the font size? Control plus. Say.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Much better.
Yeah. So now you see everything. Like suddenly you see everything that we just created. So you're looking under the hood of the website. So there's this header section, right, which we said we'd ignore. What we are concerned about is the body. Now, so the body is the entire website. And inside the body, as we had seen, there are different kinds of divs. So there's something called the cover section, there's the instructor section, and then there's the participants section. And so you can, like, if you click on any one div, right, it shows you what is contained inside that, the Russian doll, the analogy that Denny was using. So if I click on the instructors div, it shows me the heading instructors. So let me go down. And so this is the instructors div, right? It shows you the heading and it shows you the names. If you want to, so if you're looking at this interface, right? Like this is just the entire web page. But let's say I want to figure out what is this specific element, right? Like what is the code in the HTML that corresponds to Pickle who's in Mumbai. So then I basically do a, I guess, a left click or a right. Yeah, I do a right click on that or a double click, however, and you go on inspect, and then it shows you this div, right? So it shows you that we are inside the class participants. Inside the class participant, we're looking at the subclass, which is one participant. And in that subclass of one participant, there is a pickle, and then there is the name of pickle, and then there's the location called Mumbai. Okay, and the other thing that you could use is like this tooltip. There's this tooltip, like, that you can scroll around to different pages on the different points on the website. And as you're crawling around on it, it will show you, you see how the code is changing. It's basically telling you, it's highlighting the code snippet that corresponds to the point on the page that your cursor is at, right? And so both of these are very useful because ultimately you're interested in scraping something from a web page, right? And so you want to know what's the corresponding code to it. Okay, so now we're going to, where are we right now? In terms of time, we're very far behind. But yeah, so we should take a 5-minute break, which in interest of time is going to be Well, let's just keep it to a 5-minute break and then come back at 11:55.
In the meanwhile, I think I'm done sanitizing the website. So while everyone, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll rejoin.
Yeah, everyone. Okay, great. I'm so glad to hear all of you here. Thank you. So we'll see you in 5 minutes if everyone wants a water break of sorts. Danny, do you want to play your music?
I tried to figure it out. I think, but Gather may it's not natively supported, so you have to install. I'd like do some trickery basically.
So wait, if I just play music on my end.
Oh, you mean like lo-fi? Like you just play music on your speaker? Yeah, that should.
So we are now on the second bit of this workshop, where actually we are going to before we scrape Rekta, we're going to scrape what we have already built. Okay, so give me a second. So in for some of you, Python might be where are we? Sorry. Okay, we need to. I don't think you guys will be seeing my mess, but if you are, let's just reload and start from afresh. So in general, using to scrape things, there are ways to scrape. I mean, in some ways, extract content from even something like Twitter feeds using just Excel. But when you're dealing with the kind of volume of data that you find online, you have to rely on coding. And you can query, I mean, there are a lot of sort of coding languages, and you don't have to be an expert at coding to know how to scrape. And so we're not going to get into the nitty-gritties of coding, but we'll just sort of give you the bare bones sort of resources that you need to get started with scraping. Now, we're coding in something that's a language that's called Python. And in Python, how a lot of these coding languages work is that you basically have like certain formulae or certain like what are called functions, right, encoded like that are already provided with the language. So a print statement, for example, right, like if I just say print something here, like if I say so right now you want to stare at the left side of my the black screen on the right. So let's clean it up, and now all of you should just see the blackness there.
Yeah.
And we say print. So this workshop is fun, right? We say something like that. And if I just say print, it basically prints, right? And this might seem very stupid, but yeah, this is kind of like the print is a function that is provided by Python. But then there are also like a lot of, for example, tools that think of it as like a storeroom in your house, and where you have a lot of tools. But then if you want to work in your living room, you need to pull out that tool from the storeroom into the living room, right? So like where you're working is your living room, and so you basically want to import is like I'm basically extracting this tool. And so the tool we want to use is something called PyQuery, and this is how you sort of define it. Okay, like you say from PyQuery, right? Import PyQuery. Now there are different ways of doing it, but let's not get too stuck up on it. But like this is, if you want to use this tool called PyQuery, this is how you do it. Also, because I want to give it a nickname and I don't want to call it PyQuery in my living room or throughout my code, I'm going to nickname it as PQ, right? So henceforth, every time I am using this tool called PyQuery, I will just refer to it as PQ. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you actually, so this was the web page that we've all, no, not this is not the web page. This is the web page that we've all created, right? And we actually now want to load this web page, right? We basically need to let my living room, my Python space know that I am actually going to work on this web page, right? So the command I'm looking at is I literally just use PyQuery, right? So I could have done PyQuery, right? But and I could have written it like this, but because I gave it a nickname, I'm just going to use PQ. Okay, so I say that, hey, there's a variable called document. I want that variable to be the contents of this web page, which we have just created. And so now let's just print this, right? Ignore everything else that's there. We're going to print this document, right? So print what is in this document. So just for us to get a sense of what happens when you load the website into your local space. Oh, this is taking unnecessarily long.
You just reloaded, na? Maybe it's also installing the library. But shouldn't you see some feedback that it's installing the library?
No, it's running. It's just, I think it's saying stop. In the meantime, does anyone have any doubts about what is this left-hand variable? What is, okay, there we go. So now that it's run, what do you see? Like what are we seeing right now?
HTML code. I heard a muffle somewhere. It's the entire HTML code that.
Exactly. So this is exactly what we just created, right? So this command line here, which we said doc is equal to this, it basically, pulled out the entire HTML code just using this URL, right? So obviously very handy. And you have to, unless you have this HTML page, you can't really start scraping, right? So that's why you need to do this thing called, that's why you need to absolutely have this command when you start scraping. Okay, now let's get to the next step where we're saying that we want to find the instructors. So I'm going to move these two things to the top. And let's say we want to find from this page, who are the instructors listed here, right? So to figure out, sorry, I heard so. Okay, does someone want to maybe just wager a guess? This might be a little, yeah. Just how would we do that?
Look for the division class that says instructors.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Right. So we want to look at the division clause that says instructors. Now, how do we figure out what that? Now, I mean, you guys created this webpage, so you know exactly what that class was. So yeah, so we're interested in this division class that's called instructors, right? Now let's figure out how do you find out the content from this division class. So I've already typed out the first few commands, but moving forward, there are no instructions. Yeah. So here you say in the document, right? We created this document. In this document, find, right? And because if you remember, Denny had said that, could everyone, could someone put themselves on mute because I'm hearing a strong echo.
Asked Yatish. I think it's coming. Yeah, thanks, Yatish.
Okay, great, thank you. Right, so I basically use this dot notation. If you remember, Denny had said that even in CSS, like if you want to refer to a class, you use the dot notation. So you said, I want to find what is in, what basically find me the class instructor. Okay, now let's just see what happens when I print, right? I'm going to print what has been saved in this variable called instructor. And oh no, it's going to print the entire document. Let's maybe sorry, let's get rid of this command because then it's printing the entire document. Oh, we did not find anything in instructor. So wait, let's go back and see what's going wrong. Because the class is called instructors. So I made a spelling mistake basically. So we need to, yeah, basically now it should find it. Because I made a spelling mistake and I told it to find a class that did not exist on the page, right? So now I've fixed the spelling mistake, and it's saying that it's showing you that entire that entire sort of class snippet. It's showing you that entire division with the class name instructors. Now, in a typical project, you're not really interested in like this code snippet. You really want the text. You want to know Denny's name, and you want our names. So what you do for that is you basically use this function called I want the text from this variable instructor, right? So let's do instructor.text. And so if you see, it shows instructors, right? And it shows the name Denny, and it shows the name Tarunima. But let's say we don't want the heading instructors, and we only want the names. Okay, so I'm going to pause at this. Does anyone want to guess how we would do that? I don't want the heading of the class, so I don't want instructors shown. I just want Denny and Tarunima's name shown.
Do we look for the divisions within the divisions? So the header and the paragraph? I mean, the paragraph,
Right.
the header, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just as a, just to get, the naming correct. So you're right, like you're looking for something inside the division, but you're looking for an element inside a division, right? So you're looking for these P, H3s, these are all elements. But conceptually, your idea is correct that you're looking for the Russian doll inside the Russian doll called division. So what I will do is instructor, and then I will say find, right? And now I'm going to find I'm going to find the element P, right? Because you see how this is a paragraph. So I'm interested in the paragraph variables, right? The paragraph elements, right? And yeah, and I just want to print those. So let's see what happens there. No. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of all the extra print statements. Why is it loading?
Maybe somebody pressed.
Oh, I see.
Oh wait, you also disconnected yourselves.
Yeah, someone did try to change it. Okay. Guys, after this, it's all yours. So just give me maybe 2 more minutes. Yeah, so basically, I want to see what happens when I'm trying to find the variable. Give us a second. The entire workspace of sorts is reloading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you also add .text here?
You would. Okay, so great. So I like how we're, yeah.
No, there's one tricky aspect to that. So let's see if we can run without the dot text, and then.
Oh, we did, and that's what came on the top. You saw, right. You see the print statement.
Right. So yeah. now try running this. I'm anticipating an issue. Oh, okay, I was wrong.
Yeah. Okay, great. So whoever suggested that, bang on. The idea being that when you're finding an element, it actually pulls out. It's literally an element can have multiple aspects of which text is just one, right? Like as Denny had described, you can have, for example, the text hyperlinked to something else, right? So when you're finding an element by the class name or by the element name, a lot of things other than just the text get pulled out. But if you're interested in the text, which my sense is a lot of people in this group are, the .text function is your friend. Okay, so now I am going to pause, and now there are no more codes for hints. Let's try and find the participants in this from this webpage. So who are all the participants of this workshop? Okay, so how do we resolve this? We now have 4 people on this script. I think a lot of you might have duplicated the copy already.
Not sure. I think you should just type the code for finding participants.
No, I actually want everyone to do this collaboratively.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah. So we have 4 people on the code snippet. Does one of them maybe want to take over the cursor, and I will stop typing? And whoever's taking over the cursor, please just raise your voice and say I'm taking over the cursor, so someone else doesn't also start doing it.
Yeah, Kate, you should go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. And everyone else on the chat can help her out.
Oh,
Okay.
right. It's because the names are H1 and the locations are paragraphs. So you just need to modify your P.
So maybe let's just wait. Let's just try and understand what was happening here, right? So what we did was we said that in the class participant, right, find me the text of paragraph P, right? Which is why it only picked out the location. Does that make sense? But what we want is all the participant details. So we want the name as well as the location. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but whoever it was, give it a shot. How would we do this?
Hi, I think it's just H4 because it says the names under the H4 tag.
Yeah.
So the names are under the H4. Yeah. Okay. Great. Let's run that and see how it goes. I'll run it. I don't know if someone else is running it, but yeah, I can run it. Great. So I may, yeah, two of us ran it. So yeah, we basically found all the participants and the names, right, for all the participants. So that was fantastic. Now we will move on to, well, this was a website that we all knew, right? So like we'd created this website, so we understood its structure better. But now let's jump into a website that we did not build. So we really need to understand its sort of code from scratch, okay? So I'm going to comment everything out. Oops. What this website we're scraping is, as Denny introduced it, is called Rekhta. Okay, and this is Urdu poetries. And we've already found like one URL just to make, to make sure everyone's looking at the same URL. And if you see your Replit, that URL is listed, on line 23, right? Okay, so what's our step one? So we have this URL, but we need to tell my Python environment / my living space that I want this URL and I want to work on it. So what am I going to write?
Someone wrote PQ. Hardik wrote PQ. You write PQ.
Okay.
Doc equal to PQ.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So doc equal to PQ, right? And then we want to, we basically, what we did earlier was we copy pasted this URL here, right? And that's what we've done earlier. And so we basically can run it. And yeah, it's not going to sort of, wait, actually I should have printed the doc. Sorry. Okay, so we are now going to print and see what's in our doc. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in comparison to the website we built, just look at the HTML code for this, right? Like really long and yeah, somewhat gibberish. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to find the heading of this poem, right? Now, you can try and make sense of this gibberish, or you can use our friend, which is the inspect element tool, right? So you do a left click and you click on inspect, and that loads the entire, right, as what we said earlier, it loads the entire web page. And as you can see, it's like a fairly lengthy web page. Yeah, so now I'm interested in the heading, right? Now, which means that I want to understand what division / class / like element I should use to extract this heading. And so I can do two things, which was the inspect tool. I can click on this and it has shown me, it's basically telling me that it is in a class called poem page content header, and it has this H1, right? Like it's under this heading type called H1. And that's your heading. So let's move here. What should we write as the heading of this? Like, how will we find the heading of this poem? There are absolutely no H1. Okay, great. But let's get the syntax correct. So what would be the exact syntax? And again, I will stop and someone else can take over and type out the exact, or you could also just type it out in the chat window. I see. What if I just protest and I was like, I will not continue this if no one.
Okay. We'll respond. Don't worry. Similar as we did with the instructor section. Probably make a section for. I mean, so page or so what's it called? Sorry, one sec. Poem page container. So maybe like poem page as the variable.
Okay, so we will do doc.find, right? We were looking for something.
So poem page equals doc.find, and then dot poem page container. Sorry, poem page content header.
So you're saying poem page is equal to doc.find, and then you said I should use
dot poem page content header.
This one, right? Okay, so another trick when you're using the inspect element tool is if you just double click on the class, like if on the class name, it will just select it for you, and then you can do a control-C, control-V, so you don't have to, repeat my mistake of getting the spellings wrong. Okay, so we've done that. And just to see what has been saved in that, when we do that doc find, let's print the variable and see what happens. Oh no, I should comment this out. Also, if just to like when I put a hash in front of a statement, basically that doesn't get executed. That's just for you and me to read it, but it doesn't really, the computer doesn't do anything with it. Okay, so let's see what happens when we. Well, that's complicated. I don't think this is what we were looking for. Let's just run it again. I think it might be running. Oh no, so that's literally what is contained in the poem page content header. And I think that kind of makes sense because if you see the class poem page content header, like look at all the content that's in it, right? There's like author add favorite, there's like this how do you share it, right? All of this is also part of the
Can you scroll to the very top? Can you scroll to the very top of what got printed on REPL?
Yes.
Just to see if the actual heading is there or not.
So what if like in the poem page we do dot find again, and I think h1 is the poem ending is written in h1. So if we do the find h1 dot text, would it work? Poem page.
That's the idea, but to me it looks like Tardama, it's returning a lot more things, right? It's not just that div, isn't it?
I think it is. I think I might have like it's also like the entire console, right, Denny? I'll have to scroll at a point where like it starts, which so let's just proceed with let's just proceed
what the feedback was, what the suggestion was just.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we have poem page. Okay, and so now let's just do dot find h1 and let's see if that works. Okay, that worked.
Yeah.
Right, but then we see all this other information around it. So what's missing?
Dot text print.
Okay.
Dot text.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So I could just okay. So I can do dot. Sorry. Go ahead.
Better to sort of have this command in the print line or in the stored section?
It really is. It depends on how you want to use this information downstream, right? So I could literally do this, right? Like I could not have anything in this variable called poem page and like literally do print of, right? And I don't have, whoops, this is going to give me an error, sorry. I don't have to save my, so what's happening when you do an equal to sign? Like if you, I don't know if this reminds anyone of like high school math, is that you're saying that do a calculation and save that into a variable called poem page, right? But if it's a calculation that I don't ever need eventually, then I don't have to save it. I can just print it and be done with it, right? The benefit of saving that calculation in a page like this, or in a variable like this, is that I can I can then do use that saved variable, right, and do things like this, right? I can do poem page.text stuff.
It also helps the readability, like, so that what you saved is the poem page. I think in this case, the variable is kind of a misnomer, but if it was called heading or the poem heading, it just becomes a easy to remember variable.
Yeah.
Right,
I think that's fair.
Sense.
Yeah. Okay. So congratulations, we now have the heading. Who is the author of this post, of this poem? So I'm going to go back here, and what should I be looking for?
A very basic question: do people see the author's name on the website? Can someone shout out the author's name or type it? Okay. So
thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we do inspect. So as you can see, there is this class that says author add favorite. Then there is another. There's a link to the href. There's a link, and then there is the name of the author, right? So we're really interested in this name called Dag Dehelvi. So what class should we search for?
Ghazal author.
Ghazal author. Okay. Let's do that.
Dot
text. Okay, great. So before I even do, I will just write. So I need to do dot text. Hold it. I'll fix it any second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm building it out backwards, but let's just do it like this. Okay, so we're gonna find the author is equal to doc.find. Okay. So we are looking for the class Ghazal author, and we're trying to extract the text from it. Let's see if this works.
Print.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, so great. Now we have the heading, and when we have the author. I'm going to skip the bio page. Let's just go directly to how do you find all the shares, which is that how do you, now I actually want all of these couplets, right? Like I want each of these couplets. So maybe I think, Denny, this is a good point to break into the
lab, right?
into the lab groups. Let's just pause at this. And so the problem statement at hand is that you want to find all the shares. Okay. How we can do this is that all of you can duplicate the replit that you all have, right? And